When I reflect on when I was asked to come and do this, obviously it was an immediate yes because of my love for Just Dane, Mom, and the work that has been done in this community for a number of years. But it's not just about the advocacy work. Everybody who does this work, there's a little bit of that personal thing and that personal touch that draws all of us to do the work that we do. And I still remember very vividly, and it's always so important to me, that I remember driving, moving to Madison, unable to get a job. And I remember delivering pizzas at Pizza Hut down in Fitchburg. Y'all laughing, that wasn't funny. I'm like, I got a degree from Morehouse, two from Princeton. I can't find a job. What is going on? And I was over the house of Dr. Perry and Virginia Henderson when they introduced me to Mary Kay Baum. And I'll never forget the conversation that, because Mary Kay Baum, they were doing a fundraiser at the house at the time, and I was fresh in my Pizza Hut uniform, smelling like cheese and pepperoni pizza. And a book of mine and a friend and I had just co-edited was there. It just dropped. I couldn't even afford to buy the book, my own book. And so I was telling Mary Kay about it, and I'll never forget the conversation we had. She should have been trying to raise money, but she stopped that time to say, you know what? There's something special about you, young man, and I want to figure out a way to bring you on to Mom. I said, well, I'm delivering pizza, so I will take whatever I can get. And she gave me the challenge. It was a challenge. She said, Everett, we're going to get this grant. We're trying to fight for this grant from United Way. It's not a whole bunch of money, but will you write the grant? I said, well, I'm finished with Princeton. Surely I can write a grant. So I wrote the grant. She said, but now I need you to go argue for the grant at United Way. I said, well, I am a preacher, so I can try to figure that out too. And I remember getting that money, and it wasn't a whole bunch of investment at the time, because at that time, recidivism was 70%. And I remember people going in and out at that time in this community, and the narrative that we were trying to change of transforming, people who were incarcerated in today's prisoners, tomorrow's neighbor, and we wanted to change that narrative, and we wanted to do something different. And I remember sitting down at the whiteboard at S.S. Morris AME Church with Barbara McKinney, and y'all know Barbara McKinney now, Alder McKinney, and sitting down with Jerome Dillard, my first two hires. Now he's the executive director over at Expo, and we sat down over at S.S. Morris, and I put up my whiteboard, and I said, what is it that we can do to ensure that men and women coming out of prison are successful? And we came up with this idea called REST. They need a residence, they need employment, they need support, they needed treatment, and we didn't need to just wait till they get to Dane County. We need to go to prisons to make sure that they knew how to advocate, so when they came home, we had a place for them to be. I tell you, I was young, well, I was young and I was idealistic, and yet that idealism reaped a reward and benefit as we were able to change that narrative. So in 2 years, this dude that nobody had ever heard of was able to bring together and convince a community that these men and women were our neighbors, our friends, our community, and we saw the recidivism rate for those who were coming into Mom Just Dane at the time to go from 70% down to 15%. 15%. There goes Jerome Dillard just walking in right there. Yeah, go give it up, Jerome, now. And we stayed committed to that. And it was meeting all of the people who stay in my heart, like the Lord McCoy, who's no longer with us, or Diane, who's no longer with us, or Eddie Quinn, who's no longer with us. These people were with me, and I was with them. Tamara Oman, who touched me, Shanika, who were there, who were some of my first clients of going into prisons and convincing people that there is a different way. There's a just way. There's a common way that we could be able to build. And it was Just Dane. It was the love that I received there that gave me the courage to go to law school. Because I said to myself, listen, there's no way they were going to treat our people disrespectfully if I had a law degree. I had planned to get my law degree, come back to Mom, and just start suing people. That's it. That's all I knew to do. I was like, I'm going to go to law school, I'm going to sue everybody, and we're going to sue all these people. We're going to sue them into justice. That's what we're going to do. But I always say God had another plan, and, ended up running for judge, and it was nice. It's been nice. But every day I take the bench, Linda, It is a reminder to me of all the people that I work with. You're going to hear about Jackie. Jackie was so committed to that prisoner simulation. You're going to hear about the work that y'all better give her up one day. Every person who came into that building, we saw them as a human being. And that is the gift of Just Dane. For over 50 years, they have been rewriting the narrative of what is possible in the lives of people. And they take people with lived experience, like a John Givens, to put him out in front to say to people, this is what you can do because I did it, and I know how to do it, and you can do it. And if I can do it, if you can do it, we're going to tell the whole community to do it. And that is what has been a transformation for all of our lives. And so I'm grateful to be here tonight to be an MC. But none of this is possible without great leadership. And I remember the first time I met this woman, came into the office. I had my little baby, my little 2-year-old Sydney was still in the crib. She just had her little 2-year-old Minna was still beside her. And I remember saying to her, she was all like, well, why don't you run the organization? I said, no. I said, I'm here to make sure that you are successful. And I gave my commitment to her. And in turn, that leadership has transformed and continues to transform our community. As the front of the bulletins look, it's a phoenix. And we are about a community that is able to make sure that people can rise from the ashes. But it's all to all of us to embrace the transformation when they arise in their new form. So it's with great privilege and great honor that I introduce and bring to the stage the Executive Director of Just Dane. Let's give it up for Miss Linda Ketchum.
I don't know why I always have to follow the Honorable Reverend Everett Mitchell, but it seems I do. That's God's plan. So thank you, my friend. Thank you for joining us this evening to celebrate 50 years of impact in our community. There are a few special acknowledgments this evening before we move into our formal program. Again, thank you, Everett, for always saying yes. I want to thank our new friends from Homeboy Industries, Father Greg, Javier, and Elvis for flying in from LA to help us celebrate, and for your inspiring work, which helped to inspire our Just Bakery program, as did Eddie Quinn, who Everett mentioned. Eddie's story really inspired the creation of Just Bakery. And someday when we open that cafe, there's going to be there's going to be a little sign that says Eddie's Place. We want to thank Gene Pfeiffer. Gene's husband, Chuck Pfeiffer, was the executive director at Just Dane for our first 25 years. You can't do this job without the support of your family and your spouse, who give just as much as you do, but it's always behind the scenes. Gene flew into Boston to celebrate with us this evening, and I know, Gene, you probably will hate this, but I'm going to ask if you would just stand and be recognized. Thank you for all of your support over our 50 years and for sharing Chuck with us. What a gift that was. I'd like to recognize some of our elected officials joining us this evening. Mayor Satya Rhodes Conway. Our first development director, now Alder Nasra Wahelie. She's here somewhere. Alder Barbara McKinney, I think, is here with us, or will be shortly. So, JL Curry, I know JL is here. Regina Vitavere. Derek Fields, I know is here. Elder Jeanette Figueroa Cole is also here. I know Alder Tag Evers had another engagement, was hoping to be here, so I'm hoping he's able to find his way. I also want to thank County Board Chair Patrick Miles. I'm not sure if he's... County Supervisor Dana Pellebon, I know is here. County Supervisor Heidi Wegleitner. And I will sincerely apologize if I've left anyone off the list. There's a lot of you here. I might have missed someone, so I apologize for that. But I want to thank you for your support of JustDane, of our work, and for your service to our community. In the times in which we live, public service is often a thankless job. It's often a job that involves a lot of hostility and a lot of abuse. And so we truly, truly thank you for your service and your willingness and your courage to be engaged and to take a leadership role in our community. I want to say a huge thanks to our staff, interns, and volunteers, past and present. So would all of you, past and present, staff, interns, and volunteers, stand and be recognized. Thank you to the tens of thousands of individuals, yes, tens of thousands of individuals who have over the past 50 years honored us with their stories, walked through our doors, and trusted us to walk alongside them in their journey to healing. We honor you, and we hold your trust as sacred. We want to thank our sponsors, American Family Insurance, True Stage, MG&E Foundation, the United Way of Dane County. And I want to give us just a little special shot. When Everett talked about 2005, the Journey Home Grant, the United Way of Dane County was the first United Way in the United States to look at the challenges of our criminal legal system and reentry and say we need to do something. And so they deserve a huge thank you for taking that leadership role. I want to thank C.G. Schmidt, Alliance Energy Foundation, Custer Burrish Financial Services, First Congregational United Church of Christ, Bethel Lutheran Church, Christ Presbyterian Church, the Prison Ministry Project, Orchard Ridge United Church of Christ, Center for Law, Society, and Justice at the University of Wisconsin, Park Bank, Numbers for Nonprofits. And we also want to recognize that we don't do our work in a vacuum. We rely on a network of community partners and collaborators, some of whom are with us tonight. Centro Hispano, Project Club TNT and Project Babies, Mentoring Positives, the African Center for Community Development, Operation Fresh Start, Omega School, Expo, the United Way of Dane County, the City of Madison Community Development Division, and Dane County. We couldn't do this work without your partnership, your support, and your collaboration, and so we thank you as well. "50 years is a pretty significant milestone for an organization founded in a church basement by a group of folks who weren't sure whether they could pay the director they had just hired. I think that Chuck told me that story. They were driven by their faith to work for justice. Our work has always been about faith, believing in something better despite evidence to the contrary, believing that we can work together to solve difficult problems, to find solutions for the disparities and the challenges that face our community. That's not going to change over our next 50 years. Our work isn't finished, but you all know that. You all know this work is far from finished. There are new partnerships, there are new collaborations, there are new initiatives that are imagining new ways of being in community. We're excited by the prospect of the next 50 years. We're eager to continue our collective work with all of you to move and to create a community in which everyone thrives, a community in which everyone truly has an opportunity to succeed. So thank you once again for being with us this evening, and I'm going to turn it back over to my friend Everett Mitchell.
At this time, we will begin to start our video, and the video will play. And as video plays, it's just a montage of the history of Mom, Just Dane, and all the various stakeholders and people who are connected to it. The video? All right.
I think that Just Dane has been really a leading force for equity and justice in our community, and in particular around racial justice. I see Just Dane showing up in all of the right places in Madison and really presenting a progressive vision of what it means to have a just and equitable community. I think one of the things that I most appreciate about JustDane's impact in Madison is their leadership in helping to smooth folks' reentry from the criminal justice system into our community.
It's not just happenstance that you can reduce your recidivism rate from 70 to 15. Is because when you build a system that is human focused, that listens to those individuals, you can create a different model. And that different model was around, today's prisoners, tomorrow's neighbor. That reentry idea that we are a better community, a safer community when we meet the needs.
As a criminal defense attorney, it's not uncommon for me to be seated next to the most hated person in the room. And often when they come back out of incarceration, although they should feel some sense of absolution or forgiveness from the community, that's just not the reality. Then the question is, who is there to try to help that individual transition back into the community and move forward with their life? Who's there to welcome them with open arms, to forgive, to offer compassion, to walk side by side with that individual? And that's the impact Just Dane has had. There's not any other organization that I can think of in the community that I can confidently refer my clients to, knowing that they're going to be welcome, they're not going to be judged, they're going to be supported.
Just Dane has played a significant role in my life because they give out chances and they care at Just Dane. It makes me feel like we all a family. They treat you like family at Just Dane, so I am one to say thank you to Judge Dane, thank you to the staff who all helped me through my journey.
The fact that Just Dane is working directly with people to understand their needs, to get them the skills that they need, to set them up for good employment in our community is really important.
Just Dane has improved my life because it has changed me in ways that I haven't thought I could be changed. Opened my eyes to new opportunities, to explore things that just needed to be done so I could be out in the community and keep myself safe and stay out of incarceration.
So my experience with Mentoring Connections has been rewarding. For as many years as I've been involved, it's been a team of people who are genuine, not doing this thing for show, dedicated to the work, and that's why and I say this all the time, it's my favorite nonprofit in Madison because of the work that they do, or that we do as a team. The people at Just Dane are truly about a community impact, and I truly believe that they've done it very well over the years.
The unique thing about Just Dane is that when they are working with individuals, those individuals are coming from some of the most challenging circumstances in their lives. But what Just Dane does is really offers that full wraparound. They do everything possible to ensure that people are not falling through the cracks when they're in these challenging circumstances, and they show up in a way that is authentic, compassionate.
Everything they do is commitment to individuals to make their lives better, to, again, give dignity and value and worth to everybody, and especially those who have been cast aside by the greater community. and not necessarily intentionally, but without thought. And so what Just Dane does is raises all of those people up and invites us to be part of it.
Oh, the courage you gain from just being around the presence of the people involved with Just Dane is just a game changer. You find inner strength that you didn't know that you had. Just that belonging, that knowing that you are part of a community.
Community is the reason I do this. We wonder what we can do in this world to make a difference. And you look around, it's all the big problems to solve, and you wonder, what can I do? Well, what I find we can do is do one small thing, do one thing and help one person, and each time you change the community for the better. Oh, I love the name Just Dane. Justice, number one, but the simplicity of Just Dane. That's who we are and that's what we do. We do it in this community, which we love so much.
Just Dane has a history of committed people standing in the gap for those that many people may have discarded and giving them a sense of hope and purpose. And that's what I see as a judge, a whole system of people who have lost hope, who don't see a sense of purpose. And if you can give them a resource that restores it back to them, in many ways you're adding back the essence of their humanity so they can have something to move forward with.
Yes, Just Dane is a great place.
Just Dane is opportunity.
Just Dane is compassion.
Just Dane makes me think of integrity.
Important to the community. Genuine, I have to stay with that word.
Just a wonderful place to feel accepted, encouraged, and inspired.
Just Dane is love, compassion, and justice.
Just Dane is truly amazing.
Just Dane is powerful.
I would say Just Dane is hope, Just Dane is real, and Just Dane is present. All those three things are elements necessary to take somebody that people may have discarded and give them a sense of place to be seen and a purpose to live out. One of the primary individuals that was responsible for so many years of working tirelessly to bring the knowledge and the passion and the insight to our community through Just Dane is a wonderful, wonderful, wonderful human being by the name of Miss Jackie Austin. Let's invite her up to the stage.
It's an is this on? I get an award. It's an honor to present the Visionary Award to Jackie Austin. Jackie's advocacy, her protest work, and her commitment to justice spans well beyond her 22 years at Just Dane. She's been a powerful advocate for change, serving oftentimes as our North Star and someone I came to rely on to make sure we were staying true to the course. She's been a powerful voice for justice and equity throughout our state. And so, in grateful recognition of her lifelong advocacy around equity and social justice, for her innovation in cultivating our awareness of these issues, and for her coaching in the impact of the words that we use so they would be respectful, edifying, and purposeful. I'm pleased on behalf of the staff and board of JustDane to present this Visionary Award to Jackie Austin.
I was wondering if we could get a picture. Come on in. You know, you have to have a photo. Well, it's an honor to be here, and I brought my speech, but I don't really like reading speeches, and so people were saying, what is JustDane to them? To me, JustDane is a place where we have a moral compass. And I was talking with a friend this morning, who's somewhere out there, Kathy, and I was explaining that I was going to get this Visionary Award today, and I've never thought of myself as a visionary. So I wondered, well, what does being a visionary mean? And I decided it means having a moral compass. But if you have a moral compass, that means you know the difference between right and wrong. And if you know the difference between right and wrong, when you see something that's wrong, that's harmful, that's bad, that's not good, you're supposed to do something about it. And I think that's what makes me a visionary, is that I'm not willing to see what's clearly very wrong and then ignore it. So what got me here, actually, is that a foster child of mine grew up, had come from a very troubled background, had a long history of trauma, including physical and psychological torture as a child, and ended up in what we used to call the criminal justice system, and we are now calling the criminal legal system, because the system itself is somewhat criminal. Long story short, he ended up being convicted for a 10-year sentence, which required maximum security prison. And the first time I visited him in prison, he had been incarcerated for about 1.5 years. And I learned what it meant when you said the term prison pallor. This pale, gaunt, ghostly-looking figure showed up in the visiting room, and I almost didn't recognize him. He had been so harmed by this first 1.5 years of incarceration. And as someone connected to a prisoner, as the family member visiting, I was treated very badly, quite honestly, just rudely and with no concern for me as a person. Little by little, I started meeting other visitors going to the prison. I started meeting some of the other prisoners in the visiting room, although you're not supposed to cross-visit and see other families. And when my foster son was finally released from prison, he did not survive his period of community supervision, then called parole. He died while on parole. I visited Wisconsin prisons for something like almost 2 years before I became aware of the amount of racism in the system. I showed up at the Fox Lake Institution one time and found myself in a long line of about 50 black women, and I had never seen them before. So being someone who's curious, and it still hasn't killed me, I spoke with some of these women. Hi, how are you? Who are you? What in the world are you doing here? I've never seen you before. Turns out I was usually driving my car up to the prison, I think on Tuesdays. I had a family business at the time and could set my own schedule. And they had come on a prison bus from Milwaukee. And I learned at that time, that half the people in the prisons were black people, but I had never seen them in the visiting rooms because I did have the skin privilege and the class privilege to come and go at my convenience and not have to rely on a bus. But that kind of experience of people literally ending up harmed or even dead, and definitely excluded from even knowing about each other in a prison system, certainly didn't sit well with me. And so I just went deeper and deeper and deeper into working on these issues. And I started just as an individual, but kept finding more and more other people to work with. And that's what got me to JustDane. There was something called the Justice Issues Task Force that invited me to come speak. And at the time, there were two things concerning us. We did not want the death penalty to come back in Wisconsin. and we did not want the maximum security prison, the so-called supermax, that eventually was built against our wishes, but we were working to prevent that kind of thing. So, in short, what all this means to me is that any of us have the power and the ability, basically, to know right from wrong, good from bad. You can see when a system is harming people, and it's quite clear, and again, not necessarily with deep intention, but that society has relied on a very simplistic punishment model that does not fix problems, does not address core systemic issues in the society, whether that's about class or race or people's personal traumas, addiction, all kinds of issues. And we're not addressing that stuff. We're trying to lock it away. And we used to say, you can't build your way out of crime. You can't build your way with concrete walls and bars and chains towards safety for everyone. What does work, however, is to start looking at harm reduction approaches and looking at restorative justice, which I met here at JustDane, then Madison Urban Ministry, and to take the small steps each day, each of us, to live according to a restorative practice, to live by listening to what other people say, observe what we see in other people, care about other human beings, ask the question, why did this terrible crime occur, and what can we do about it to reduce the harm? So I'm just happy to have done my part, however large or small it was, to just advance the idea that we can transform lives, we can transform our communities, and we can do a whole lot better as a society by taking restorative harm reduction approaches that are practical, meaningful, and actually get us someplace, rather than just simply relying on punitive, outdated, really stupid punishment models that don't work. Thank you, David. Thanks, Everett.
And that was what our staff meetings were like all the time. This time I'd like to call up Pastor Craig Gartland and Mary Jane Armada to accept the Partners of Change Award on behalf of Blackhawk Church. Let's give them some love as they come.
For the last several years, Blackhawk Church has been participating in a movement called Advent Conspiracy during the Christmas season, resulting in extreme generosity from the congregation to organizations outside the walls of their church. JustDane's Healing House and Just Bakery have both benefited greatly from this generosity. So we want to thank Blackhawk Church for their support of and partnership with JustDane, and for their commitment to the broader community, helping to bring comfort and healing to individuals and families. So JustDane's 2024 Partners for Change Award is presented with appreciation for and in recognition of Blackhawk Church and their strong commitment to purposeful community impact through the generosity of Advent Conspiracy grants.
Thank you. I'm Mary Jane. I'm a member on Blackhawk's Church Elder Board, and this is Craig.
And I serve as executive pastor at Blackhawk, and I do have notes to keep me on track. Since our beginnings as a church in Madison on Blackhawk Avenue in 1965, we've always had as a core value and commitment seeking basically the flourishing of all in our greater community. And as we've grown over the years, we've intentionally sought out partnerships with organizations making significant impact for the greater good in Madison and our greater community. Partners with mission statements like to help transform individual lives and social systems to create a just and equitable community. So partners just like JustDane. And rather than trying to replicate the creative and impactful work that an organization like JustDane can accomplish in our community, we've challenged our congregation to respond, to be generous with their resources. And so we've been able to give through opportunities like our Advent Conspiracy grants. And through those grants, as you mentioned, Kathy, we've been able to help launch Healing House, give towards expanding Just Bakery, and purchase necessary technology for Just Connections, and to be part of many organizations and other churches who have given towards those ends. And that work and being a part of that has inspired many of our people to then volunteer with Just Dane. Your work in Dane County has captured the imagination of our people at Blackhawk Church. It's also opened our eyes to the struggles that continue to be real in our community, and year after year has inspired radical generosity among our people. So if our grants and partnership have helped multiply your efforts, they've multiplied our efforts as well. If they've been a blessing, the blessing has been twofold and more back onto us.
So on behalf of Blackhawk Church, we are humbled to be recognized for Just Dane's Partner for Change Award recipient. We consider it a tremendous honor, and for us, it's been our great pleasure to partner with you through Advent Conspiracy funds to be able to support and to fund the partnership that makes such an impact in our community. Your efforts, we're just glad to be a part of it. We also celebrate you in your 50 years of service here in Dane County, making a lasting impact through all of the community with your effective and positive changes that you make with people and the transformation of their lives in the programs. We look forward to partnering with you in the future years to come. And we want to cheer for you and the efforts of your mission that you take very serious. We are so grateful to be a part of the transformation of individual lives and social systems that you guys push into, and to push forward with justice in an equitable community here in Dane County. So thank you.
So we thank all of our honorees. Let's give our honorees another clap of appreciation. And at this time, it's a great honor and privilege to introduce Father Gregory Boyle, founder of Homeboy Industries. You have his beautiful description inside of our program. He is the founder of Homeboy Industries in Los Angeles, the largest gang intervention, rehabilitation, and reentry program in the entire world. He was born and raised in Los Angeles, a Jesuit priest from 1986 to 1992. He served as pastor of Dolores Mission Church in Boyle Heights. Dolores Mission was the poorest Catholic parish in Los Angeles that also had the highest concentration of gang activity in the city. What I liked about his story was that he witnessed the devastating impact of gang violence on his community during the so-called decade of death that began in the 1980s and peaked at 1,000 gang-related killings in 1992. As Jackie said, in the face of law enforcement tactics and criminal justice policies of suppression and mass incarceration as a means to an end to gang violence, he and his parish and community members adopted what was a radical approach at the time: treat gang members as human beings. Treat them as human beings. In 1988, they started what would eventually become Homeboy Industries, which employs and trains former gang members in a range of social enterprises, as well as provide critical services to thousands of individuals who walk through his doors every year seeking a better life. He is the author of the 2010 New York Times bestseller, Tattoos of the Heart, The Power of Boundless Compassion. If you have not read that one, it will touch and transform your life. His second book, Barking to the Choir, The Power of Radical Kinship, was published in 2017, and his new and third book is The Whole Language, The Power of Extravagant Tenderness, that recently debuted in the fall of 2021. He has received the California Peace Prize and been inducted into the California Hall of Fame. In 2014, President Obama named Father Boyle a champion of change. He received the University of Notre Dame's 2017 Lattell Medal, the oldest honor given to American Catholics. Homeboy Industries was the recipient of the 2020 Hilton Humanitarian Prize, validating 32 years of Father Greg Boyle's vision and work by the organization for over 3 decades. Let's give love as we come and introduce his homeboys as they come to us today.
Thank you guys. Hello, my name's Elvis Mejia. I'm 26 years old. I was born in Los Angeles, and I'm here to share my story. So, for as long as I could remember, I grew up in a quite poor community. My mom was a single mother. My dad was from Guatemala, was deported when I was the age of 5. Since then, there was a lot of trouble in my life, a lot of trauma that I have got myself into, and eventually I started getting into the wrong hands of, or what I'll say, I started looking for role models in different areas because I never had a father. And I chased it all, and any situation, any community you could think of, I chased it through there. And I unfortunately came through some people, and as hurt as I was, had as much trauma as I did, and was affected by the community just like I was. By the age of 13, I was sentenced for a serious crime. I did 8.5 years at a youth authority. During that time, I still wasn't in tune with myself. I really didn't know myself. I did no homework. I was still affected by my trauma. By 2019 or 2018 of April, I was released from YA. I had completed everything I had to do, but I was not a changed man. I went to Homeboys for the very first time on April 28th, and I seen Gregory Boyle, and I was there for tattoo removal, and he gave me a job right there and there. Within those years, I've been with Homeboys for 5 years. Within those years, I had a couple hiccups and have fallen off. And I would like to say that it had to do a lot with not having hope. Hope is the key to everything. Giving one hope is where everything starts. So by, I want to say 2020 or 2021, I came back, seen Gray. I let him know that I was no longer part of Homeboys. He was surprised because, we were always talking to each other, and he let me know, mijo, you need to come back. And I just didn't understand why he wanted me back, even though I had left willingly of my own choice. So my journey started again, my second time at Homeboys. The second time I came to Homeboys, I was no longer the same person that I was in 2019. 2019, I was very reserved, not participating, and just lost all hope in myself. In 2021, I was a different person, trying to participate, trying to get something out of the program. When I finally had an aha moment, we call it the magic moment. And it's when that seed that was planted in you through all the groups, through all the love, through all the compassion, through all the kindness, through all the support, the community, it finally clicked and made me aware of myself. Why do they love me? Why are they so compassionate? It made me aware of myself, that I am a lovable and a compassionate person just like everybody else was at Homeboys. That I was once a hopeful young man. A hopeful young man. and that's who I wanted to be again. That same kid I was, and even though I had no father around to teach me to be a better man, I remember having handy they would hand me down clothes. I never had like a fresh shirt because my mom was single and we were just off welfare, but I felt so happy, and I remember those days. I remember, not having much to eat, but there was always food at the end of the day for me. So to dig deep and to remember myself as that kid that I was once, I had to stay at Homeboys and further my education on myself, because everything starts with trauma, and trauma is the killer of hope. And so when hope is absent from somebody, it destroys them. They succumb to everything that's around them, the wickedness and the things that they're not supposed to do. They just do it because they feel like that's all they have to do. And to realize that there's people that are there for you, people that count on you, people that think that you will make it, it just changes your whole perspective. But the most important part is that it makes you want it. It makes you want to be a part of the community now. It makes you want to be a role model, if you would say. Thank you.
Hello, my name is Javier Castro. I'm a 24-year-old young man. Grew up in Compton, California, Los Angeles County, and it's been a hell of a journey in my life. But being here this evening with you guys has been the best blessing here. So thank you guys all. Kind of grew up with a single mother as well. My father as well was deported a couple years back. Just kind of a hectic life. Grew up in foster care. Honestly, was born in 99. The year 99, I was taken from my home from my mother. Grew up in system, just the whole thing. It's been, I don't know how to explain this, but just a hell of a trauma life. I went up for adoption in 2015. I don't know, I didn't want to do it. I didn't want to go out to be a part of another family that wasn't mine. So I just chose a different path of life. It wasn't the perfect life to choose from, but living the life that I live has guided me here with you guys this evening. Myself as well, I went to youth authority. I did a couple of things I was supposed to be doing, and found myself on a 4-year sentence to youth authority, which gave me time away from my daughter. Today my daughter went up for adoption, but I didn't lose hope. I kept pushing forward, and Homeboys alone just helped me, find what I was missing in my life. My mom struggled to do what she could for me, addicted in her addiction. My grandmother was just there, but wasn't really there, just back and forth from Mexico to the United States, and just, I don't know, just in and out of foster care and things like that. It wasn't love, the love that I was looking for, but getting out of youth authority and, just before youth authority, just going to a couple of services before I got sentenced to youth authority. I met Father Greg in church on a Sunday evening, and he's like, "You're exactly what God planned you to be." And in my head, I'm just like, what does he mean by that? Like, what is this guy? Like, he doesn't even know me, He's like, "When you get out, I want you to come work for me." And I'm just like, yeah, okay. Like, I just brushed it off. But today, I could honestly say that was my biggest blessing. It took me some time to walk through them doors, but I ended up walking through them doors after a journey, and I mean, I don't regret it at all. First couple of times, I felt like I was not ready, but I learned what it took to become ready, you know? I learned that you have to have courage to try again. I learned that you have to have faith. And most of all, I learned to have hope, because I was a hopeless young man. Didn't have much faith in myself, didn't have belief in myself that I would succeed. And I didn't even think I would make it to C21, but I did. And you know, today I just live a different, completely life, and Homeboys helped me make that transformation. Homeboys helped me to become the man I am today, standing tall in front of you guys. Today, I have a family of my own, and I'm a single father, which doesn't bug me too much, but I'm being that father that I never had before, and I'm making sure that my son doesn't end up in foster care as I once did. Thank you guys for letting me share.
Thank you very much. It's a privilege to celebrate JustDane's 50 years with you. Thank you, Everett. Thank you, Jackie and Blackhawk Church, for allowing yourselves to be honored. Thank you, Kathy and Linda. Thank you, Elvis and Javier. It's been a privilege to travel with you. Javier had been on a plane once, a long time ago, a little short hop, but Elvis had never been on a plane, so it was quite thrilling. So we've been in Chicago, so it's been nice. But it's the privilege of my life to know the two of them, because the day won't ever come when I have more courage, or I am more noble, or I'm closer to God than these two gentlemen. Whenever I'm in front of a microphone, I always think of this homie named Luis Perez, who worked at Homeboy for like 10 years, a shot caller, was in prison, heroin addict, but got clean. And then I would send him to give talks when I couldn't go, and he was good at it. And I can remember we went out to dinner once, and he was giving me tips on how to speak publicly. And he said, you gotta pepper your talk with self-defecating humor. And I said, yeah, no shit, that is some good advice there. Thank you for mentioning my books, because there was I was on a plane recently, and I was returning to my seat from the restroom, and so on the aisle, a tray table was down, and a book was open, and I could see this distinctive turquoise color on the edges, and I thought, oh my God, somebody's reading my book, and so I was trying to be low pro, and I was walking past it, knocked out. I believe he might have been drooling. So apparently reading my books is the next best thing to a CPAP machine. See what I did there? That was a little self-defecating. Anyway, you come to a theater so full here to celebrate Just Dane, and it makes me think of Martin Luther King. What he said of church could well be said of our gathering here this evening. It's not the place you've come to, it's the place you go from. And you go from this place and this moment and this theater to do something very particular, which is what Just Dane has dedicated itself to for half a century. You go from this theater to create a community of kinship such that God, in fact, might recognize it. You go from this place to imagine a circle of compassion and then imagine nobody standing outside that circle. You go from this place to dismantle the barriers that exclude, as has been so eloquently articulated up here by all of you who have preceded me. You go from this place to declare that separation is an illusion, and that really, truly, there is no us and them, there's just us, just as there is Just Dane. And you brace yourself when you go to the margins, because you're standing there, and that's the only way they'll ever get erased is by going out at them. And you brace yourselves because the world will accuse you of wasting your time. But the prophet Jeremiah writes, "For in this place of which you say it is a waste, there will be heard again the voice of mirth and the voice of gladness, the voices of those who sing." And you go from here and other voices will get heard, which is precisely what happens at Just Bakery and Healing House. Other voices get heard, and that's as it should be. Homeboy Industries was started a long time ago when I was pastor of the poorest parish in the city, and it was nestled in the middle of two public housing projects, Pico Gardens and Aliso Village. It was the largest grouping of public housing west of the Mississippi. We had 8 gangs at war with each other, which is kind of not typical in a housing development to have that many gangs. And the LAPD deemed my parish to be the place of the highest concentration of gang activity in all of Los Angeles. So in 1988, I buried my very first person killed because of this sadness. And I buried my 261st 2 months ago. Not all from that community, but I know a lot of gang members. I get asked to do this. So the first thing we did was we started a school because there were so many junior high, middle school age gang members who had gotten the boot from their home school, and nobody wanted them. And so they were kind of wreaking havoc in the middle of the day. They were writing on the walls, and they were selling drugs, and they were violent. So I walked out to them, and I would kind of isolate them one at a time, and I'd say, "Hey, if I found a school that would take you, would you go?" And to my surprise, every single one said, "Yeah, I would." And then I couldn't find a school that would take them, so that kind of forced my hand a little bit. And right across the street from the church is our parochial school, a Dolores Mission School, elementary school, grades K to 8, and they occupied the first 2 floors of this huge concrete building. Well, the entire 3rd floor was the convent. And so one evening I gathered all the nuns, there were about 8 of them, and I sat them down in their living room and I said, "Hey, would you guys mind, moving out? And we could turn the convent into a school for gang members." And I remember they looked at each other and they said, "Sure." And that was the entirety of their, discernment process. And so we were off and running, and gang members came in large numbers to this school. Well, keep in mind that they were members from the 8 warring gangs, so we had 3 major fights a day. It was really a tough place. I remember teachers didn't last very long. I had a principal who lasted exactly 1 day, and I called him the next day and to see where he was, and apparently he had changed his number and checked himself into a witness protection program. But it was tough. But they came. They came every day, and then they said, if only we had jobs. And so myself and the women in the parish. So keep in mind that the profile in the housing projects were women with children mainly, not that many men. And the women and myself, we marched around the factories that surrounded the housing projects, trying to find felony-friendly employers, and that wasn't so forthcoming. So we just started things, because we couldn't find people willing to hire the homies. So we started a maintenance crew, a landscaping crew, a crew to build our child care center, all made up of rival enemy gang members from the 8 gangs. Then in 1992, after the acquittal of the 4 police officers who beat down Rodney King, every pocket of poverty in Los Angeles just ignited, except the poorest pocket, my parish. So the LA Times wanted to know why that was. So they came to interview me, and I said, well, I don't know exactly. Maybe part of it is the fact that we have 60 strategically hired rival gang members who have a reason to get up in the morning and a reason not to gangbang the night before, and more to the point of your question, a reason not to torch their own community. So the article appeared the next day. The following day, I'm summoned to the Beverly Hills office of a movie producer named Ray Stark, who happened to have $500 million. So he called me to his office and he said, how should I spend my money? And as I look back on it now, I see that I woefully undershot my request. I was young, I had hair. So I said, well, there's an abandoned bakery. It's across the street from the school. You could buy it. It has ovens. They don't work, but you could fix them. And we could put hairnets on rival enemy gang members, and I don't know, they could bake bread, and we could call it Homeboy Bakery. And that was the extent of my business plan. And he said, sure. So we're off and running again. And then a month later, in the Grand Central Market, we started Homeboy Tortillas. And once we had plural, we changed our name from what we had called ourselves before was Jobs for a Future. And we changed it to Homeboy Industries, as if there was any industry involved in this venture. And not everything worked. I remember Homeboy Plumbing was not hugely successful. Who knew? People didn't want gang members in their homes. I did not see that coming. And then we've just sort of backed our way. Nobody ever intends to do something like this, but we've evolved our way now into becoming the largest gang intervention rehab reentry program on our planet. So 10,000 folks a year walk through our doors trying to reimagine their lives, and they're trying to imagine hope. And so we greet them. The Buddhists say, "Oh, nobly born, remember who you really are." All the homies will say, we're used to being watched, but we're not used to being seen. The other day I was with all my sibs on a Zoom, and it was the anniversary of my mom's death. And I have 5 sisters and 2 brothers, and they're all married, and we're all on this Zoom. and laughing and telling stories. And my mom died like I think it was like the second year of the Trump administration. I just remember that as a marker. And she died the way you want to die. She was 92 years old, and she was died in her own home, in her own bed, surrounded by her family. I mean, and she was sharp till the very end of her life. In fact, she watched so much MSNBC, she was becoming Rachel Maddow. And she wasn't a lick afraid of dying. You know, I can remember like a month before she died, she was just giddy, and she was just so excited. And she says, "I've never done this before," which is something you say just before you go skydiving. And in fact, the day before she died, I was sitting in front of her bed, and she was asleep, and I was just me. And that never happened. You always had a bunch of people in her room. And she was napping, and she opened her eyes, and she saw me sitting at the foot of the bed, and she said, "Oh, for crying out loud." And she went back to sleep. Well, she was pissed that she hadn't died yet. Sorry. And then the next day, as luck would have it, I was there at noon. A couple of my sisters gone out to get lunch or something, and again, she had her eyes closed. But at exactly noon, she lifted herself up from the pillow. She opened her eyes. She let out this wondrous, glorious gasp. Skydiving. And then she left us. And nobody in earshot of that sound could ever be afraid of death again. But I remember in those last weeks, there'd be 2 or 4 or all 8 of her kids around her bed. My dad died 25 years before. And she'd come in and out, and when she came in, she'd just focus on you. Laser beam focused. And she would say with breathless delight, "You're here. You're here." And I always think of that when a homie walks through our doors. "Oh, nobly born, remember who you really are. You're here." At Homeboy, we're allergic to holding the bar up and asking folks to measure up. Instead, we hold the mirror up and we tell folks the truth that they're exactly what God had in mind when God made them. And then you watch folks become that truth, you watch them inhabit that truth, and no bullet can pierce it. No 4 prison walls can keep it out. And death can't touch it because it's just huge. But you have to reach in. I know you know this at Just Dane. You have to reach in and you have to dismantle the messages of shame and disgrace that keep people from seeing their truth. Parentheses, I'm a Jesuit priest, like the Pope. I'm just saying. And, but, the homies don't know so much what a Jesuit is. But we have like 3 there, and we always have, in the summer, young Jesuits and that kind of thing. So I'm in my office one day, and my office is glass enclosed, and I can look out into the whole expanse of our huge reception area and the well where they greet people when they come in. And I'm having a meeting with 2 homies who are sitting in front of my desk, and we have like 8 tours a day from people all over the world. And I recommend that you come and get a tour. It's really worth it. And the homies give the tour. So all of a sudden there are 20 people, a tour, that have just planted themselves in front of my glass thing. And it's one of those observe our founder in his natural habitat kinds of moments. And the tour guide is Osvaldo, who has a loud-ass voice. And so he says, "This is Father Greg Boyle. He is the founder of Homeboy Industries. He is a jiu-jitsu priest. So from my desk, I kind of do some of my more impressive moves. Well, anyway, I told you that to tell you this. On February 27th, 1454, St. Ignatius of Loyola wrote this one word in his spiritual diary. He was the founder of the Jesuits. And so he proceeded to use this word a lot for the rest of the 12 years until he died. And before he died, he went back and he circled this word all the times that he used it. Now, I speak Spanish. I had never heard of this word before. And the word is acatamiento. Acatamiento. And it comes from an archaic word, acatar, which means to look at something with attention. And it gets translated as affectionate awe. And though this was surely born of some mystical, solitary moment between Ignatius and his God, he wanted it to be a stance at the margins. Affectionate awe, acatamiento, which reminds me in the Acts of the Apostles where they have this one line and it says, "And awe came upon everyone." And it suggests that the measure of health in any community at all, including this one here in Madison, may well reside in our ability to stand in awe at what the poor have to carry, rather than stand in judgment at how they carry it. Acatamiento, affectionate awe. So many years ago, I was invited to give a talk to 600 social workers in Richmond, Virginia. And it was what we call in the biz a gang in-service, where people come in their keynotes and breakout sessions and workshops where you talk to social workers who commandeer a hotel ballroom from 9 to 5, and you talk about how no kid is seeking anything when he joins a gang. He's fleeing something. You talk about how no hopeful kid has ever joined a gang in the history of the world. You talk about how gangs are the places kids go when they've encountered their life as a misery, and misery loves company, of course. So I'd done a lot of these, and I said yes, and I bought my ticket. And a week before I was to fly, which is typical of me, I pull out the letter that invites me, and I go, what am I doing again? And to my horror, I discovered that I was to be the only speaker from 9 to 5 all damn day. And as the homies say so eloquently, oh, hell no, I'm not going to be the only speaker. So I pulled two homies in, Jose and Andre, African-American gang member Andre and Jose. They were from enemy gangs. I sat them down. They had been 8 months in our 18-month program. I said, look, at the end of the week, you're flying with me to Richmond, Virginia. I'd like you to get up in front of 600 social workers and tell your stories. Take your time. Because we got a long-ass day to fill. Well, I never heard their stories, and Jose gets up first, and he's like 25 years old at the time, and gang member, tattooed, been to prison, shot caller. At that juncture, we have a lot of phases in the 18 months. He had glommed on to the substance use disorder team to kind of help them. A man solid in his own recovery, and now he's helping younger homies and homegirls with their addiction issues. And so not only had he gangbanging, shot caller, prisoner, he also had a long stretch as a homeless man, even longer stretch as a heroin addict. So he gets up in front of 600 social workers and he says, I guess you could say that my mom and me, we didn't get along so good. I think I was 6 when she looked at me and she said, why don't you just kill yourself? You're such a burden to me. Well, 600 social workers audibly gasped. And he says, it sounds way worser in Spanish. And then they did that, they laughed. And then he continued, I think I was 9 when my mom drove me down to the deepest part of Baja California. And she walked me up to an orphanage. And she knocked on the door, and the guy came to the door, and she said, I found this kid. And she left me there for 90 days until my grandmother could get out of her where she had dumped me. And my grandmother rescued me. My mom beat me every single day of my elementary school years with things you could imagine and a lot of things you couldn't. Every day, my back was bloodied and scarred. In fact, I had to wear 3 t-shirts to school each day. First t-shirt, because the blood would seep through. And second t-shirt, you could still see it. Finally, the third t-shirt, you couldn't see any blood. Kids at school, they'd make fun of me. Hey, fool, it's 100 degrees. Why are you wearing 3 t-shirts? And then he stopped speaking, so overwhelmed with emotion, and he seemed to be staring at a piece of his story that only he could see. And when he could regain his speech, he said through his tears, I wore 3 t-shirts well into my adult years because I was ashamed of my wounds. I didn't want anybody to see them. But now I welcome my wounds. I run my fingers over my scars. My wounds are my friends. After all, how can I help heal the wounded if I don't welcome my own wounds? And awe came upon everyone. Acatamiento, affectionate awe. The measure of our compassion lies not in our service of those on the margins, but only in our willingness to see ourselves in kinship with them. For the truth of the matter is this: if we don't welcome our own wounds, we may well be tempted to despise the wounded. And so folks walk through our doors as they do through yours at Just Dane. And they're hoping for a place that's safe, where they can be seen and then cherished. If it's true that the traumatized are likely to cause trauma, then it has to be equally true that the cherished will be able to find their way to the joy there is in cherishing themselves and others. So let me bring this home. It occurs sometimes, at universities, in high schools sometimes, to force their students to read my books against their will. I'm not complaining, but my alma mater, Gonzaga University in Spokane, who ruins my bracket every year. Thank you. They invited me because they had forced, apparently, the incoming freshman class to read Tattoos on the Heart. So they said, could you come and could you bring 2 homies with you? And I do, and I have. And so I normally speaking bring homies who are enemies from rival gangs just to force them to share a hotel room just to mess with them. And I almost always pick homies who have never flown before just for the thrill of watching gang members panicked in the sky. And I can remember once I was at LAX, we were going somewhere, and there was 2 older veteranos, and this guy said, hey, G, are we flying Virgin Airlines because it's our first time? I said, yes, it's a requirement. We'll be coming home on American. So anyway, so I picked Larry, African-American gang member, and Mario. And they were from enemy gangs. And, I'm used to flying. You were actually pretty good, I have to admit. You're very calm. But I'm used to nervous Nellies. But nobody was as nervous as this guy, Mario. I mean, it was unbelievable. It was starting to freak me out a little bit. And I'm hard to freak out. And he was hyperventilating, which I had never witnessed, was, and we hadn't even, boarded the plane yet. And so we were at Burbank Airport, which is kind of a smallish airport, but big planes, Southwest Airlines, big planes. And you don't walk through that hermetically sealed bridge, air bridge, or whatever they call it. You walk out onto the tarmac, like you're the president, and you climb up those stairs to the front of the plane. Big feature at Burbank, steps to go to the back of the plane. So Larry is exploring the Burbank airport, and then I'm sitting there with Mario. And it's early morning, first flight of the day, and I see our flight crew arrives. And there are 2 flight attendants, females. Both of them have very large cups of Starbucks coffee, and they're schlepping up the steps to board the front of the plane. And Mario goes, when are we going to board the plane? I said, well, as soon as they sober up the pilots. There they go now. Perhaps I shouldn't have said that. So I should tell you that in our 36-year history at Homeboy Industries, I think it's safe to say Mario is the most tattooed individual, I think, that's ever worked there. He's all sleeved out to his fingertips with tattoos, neck blackened with the name of his gang, head shaved, covered with tattoos, forehead, cheeks, chin, eyelids that say the end, so that when he's lying in his coffin, apparently there will be no doubt, I guess, for anybody. And so I say, well, let's walk through the airport, thinking that'll calm him down. I had never been in public with them before. And people are like, oh my God. And mothers are clutching their kids a little more closely. And I'm thinking, wow, tomorrow's Friday. If you went to Homeboy tomorrow, you walked up to anybody there and said, who's the kindest, most gentle soul here? People would take one beat and then they'd say Mario. Yeah, Mario. Mario is proof that only the soul that ventilates the world with tenderness has any chance of changing the world. Mario is proof that the only non-delusional response to everything is kindness. So we get to Gonzaga, and there's the big talk Tuesday night with 1,000 people. But before we get to that arena, they don't tell you that they'd like you to go to 92 classrooms and speak. So I said, look, I'm going to sit in the back of the classroom, and you get up and you tell your stories. Well, they were terrified, especially Mario. Stories of terror and torture and violence and abuse of every imaginable kind. If their stories had been flames, you'd have to keep your distance. Otherwise, you'd get scorched. I would not have survived a single day of either of their childhoods. So we get to, the big arena, and Mario and Larry get up and they speak. And they do a good job, though they were terrified, especially Mario, because there was 1,000 people. And then I got up and I did my thing. And then I invited them to come up, stand on either side, and we were taking questions. And yes, ma'am. And a woman stands and she goes, yeah, I got a question. It's for Mario. First question out the gates for Mario. So Mario stands up to the microphone, and he's a tall, skinny drink of water, and he's clutching the microphone. He's just terrified. And yes. She says, well, Mario, you say you're a father, and you have a son and a daughter. They're about to enter their teenage years. What wisdom do you impart to them? What advice do you give them? And Mario closes his eyes and he clutches the microphone all over again, and he's starting to tremble, and he's getting a friggin' hernia trying to come up with whatever the hell he's going to say when suddenly he blurts out, and once he says those two words, he races back to his microphone clutching, closed-eyed refuge. But he wants to get the whole sentence out. I just don't want my kids to turn out to be like me. And there's silence until the woman who asked the question stands, and now it's her turn to cry. Why wouldn't you want your kids to turn out to be like you? You are loving, you are kind, you are gentle, you are wise. I hope your kids turn out to be like you. And 1,000 total perfect strangers stand, and they will not stop clapping. And all Mario can do is hold his face in his hands, so overwhelmed that this room full of strangers had returned him to himself. But make no mistake, everybody standing and clapping had been returned to themselves. Everyone saying to each other, "O nobly born, remember who you really are. You're here. You're here." And we celebrate Just Dane and a half a century of service in this city. But this time together in this theater was never going to be just the place you came to. It was always going to be the place you go from. And you go from here to imagine a circle of compassion so that there is nobody left standing outside that circle. And you go from here to dismantle the barriers that exclude, and you go from here to create a community of cherished belonging, a community of kinship, such that God might recognize it and here's my hunch and conviction. There isn't a single person in this auditorium who cares if anyone accuses you of wasting your time at the margins. For in this place of which you say it is a waste, there will be heard again the voice of mirth and the voice of gladness, the voices of those who sing. Thank you very much.
You left your watch. Well, thank you all so much. Thank you so much. Let's give another appreciation to the homeboys, Father Boyle. I just have to echo the idea that we lead with kindness, and let that kindness be the thing that leads us to transform, to listen, to be available, to listen to those stories. The packages may not be all that we have constructed and think packages need to be, but that is the miracle of human beings. Thank y'all for being vulnerable, sharing with us, and giving us an opportunity to be a part of your journey, to see you, and you have been seen in this place today. And my prayer for you is that all that you have poured out to us will be returned back to you, and to everything you touch will be blessed. And that as you bless the world with your stories and seed hope into another generation, that you go back home and you remind all those other homies that there is still hope to be had. And that here in this place in Madison, you got to stand on the stage, not because the stage is important, but because you are important. And we appreciate you for that. So that is our challenge, Madison, to make sure that we continue to live and be in this space where we are constantly giving that kindness out to transform the narrative so that our community stays the way that we want it to be. It may not always be there yet, but we have work to do. We have work to continue to fight for. But the hope that gives us the assurance that one day we will meet that dream that Dr. King and others and, Francis and Cece and Ignatius gave us, right, to see. So that's our challenge. So on the back of your programs, you have a QR code that you can hit. You got some envelopes to give to make sure that we keep this mission going for 50 years later. We don't want to ever have to be in a basement trying to figure out how we're going to pay the executive director ever again. But through your kindness and generosity over the years, we will make sure that another generation will be made to come behind us all to ensure that justice continues to lead the way for all of us. Thank you all for coming tonight. Thank you so much. Thank you, Just Dane. Thank you, Linda. Thank you, Jackie. Thank you, Blackhawk. God bless you and have a good night.